Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning. Welcome to Pain-Free Posture. If you want to feel better in your body, like or subscribe. And if you in class want to grab your block and bring it to the wall, we'll start there today.
Okay.
Go ahead and put your toes up on your block and allow your heels to hang down. And we'll use this to basically create a closed kinetic chain in the ankle. So we're essentially creating a lock in the ankle, and that's driving the rotation or untwisting some rotation in your lower leg up into your pelvis. So we use this a lot to be able to untwist a leg bone or a pelvic rotation so that your pelvis and your rib cage starts to line up right in line with each other. And if there's any medial rotation or external rotation in the femur that may have implications down into the ankle, we're going to just allow that to be worked out. Now we're going to borrow from Pilates a little bit here. Take your heels so that they touch and feel the entire line of muscles that goes up your inner thigh. Feel that turn on as your heels gently press together. And then lower your heels all the way as far as they'll possibly go, and then lift them back up. And then go down and lift. So inner thigh is active. You might even be able to feel the muscles right at the bottom of your butt. And see if you can turn on both sides of your glutes. So that slight external femur rotation will allow the glute to shorten just a touch, which means that you could take your sit bones and just squeeze them together just a touch.
Squeeze your sit bones together?
Squeeze your sit bones together. And then take your toes and go slightly pigeon-toed. So heels out. You might feel muscles in your outer hip, your tensor fascia lata. You might feel some gluteus medius here. Let your heels drop down again and then press them back up. Down and press. So slight internal rotation of the leg bone is going to put a little bit more arch at the low back. We're asking for a tiny bit of lumbar extension with this new position. And then back to straight. And this time just have strong ankles, spread your toes, feel the toes grip down into the floor, and then lift and lower. Awesome. Push the block away. Feet on the floor, load joints, so ankles, knees, hips, rib cage, shoulders open. And then from there, go ahead and keep your spine relatively still as your arms go up. There's going to be a little bit of thoracic extension as your shoulder blades push into your upper back as you bring your arms all the way up. Allow the shoulder girdle to glide. So upper traps can be completely active. You could even take your right hand and grab your left and pull that shoulder up, and then do the other side, lift, and if there's muscles that pull the shoulder blade down or move it in that is tight against your upper back or in reaction to something that's going on in your pelvis, go ahead and create length there. So right hand to left again, and just see if you can give that arm a pull. Take a deep breath. Expand the rib cage in a lateral east to west. And then other hand, pull that shoulder all the way up. That mid trap and upper trap are lengthened right now. They pull the shoulder blades down. The serratus, that pulls the shoulder blade back toward your spine. That all is lengthened, and so is the lat from the arm bone down into the back. Good, arms down. Now go ahead and do that again. This time leave the shoulders sort of down so that as your arms go up, the upper trap isn't overactive this time. And bring your arms back to the wall and see if you can push that. Sometimes, this is true in my body, the right side of my rib cage, maybe that's where the little bit of scoliosis is, the right side of the rib cage doesn't want to extend quite as well. So I have changes in the shoulder blade, or even an old injury in that right shoulder, because that scapular glide doesn't happen as well, probably because the rib cage doesn't get out of the way. How is it in your body? What's the difference between the right and left side? Okay, arms out to the side like this. Open your arms up, external rotate. Let the elbows be slightly away from your body. So we're using the wall to create that closed kinetic chain, the back of your hands hitting the wall, and I want you to just press the arm, so lead with your fingernails, press the arm into the wall, and fire up both sides of your mid-trap. This is the exercise to activate that mid-trap muscle. We can do it on our belly, we can do it here, but as you press your arms into the wall, feel right here, the muscle that pulls the shoulder blades together and down in our back. Find it, have that activate, take a breath. That muscle is laid over the rib cage, so you should be able to take a full diaphragmatic breath and still find that muscle. Release, and then again, shoulder blades come in toward the spine slightly and press down. That activates the mid-trap. External rotation in the shoulder, we're also getting rotator cuff, and release. Couple more. As the arms go out, shoulder blades move in toward that mid and upper back. Shoulder blades move in toward the spine and press down. Maybe that turns on the lateral hip. Oh, I just had a click in my knee. Where else in your body is this affecting? As this muscle suit that you're wearing is getting pulled in certain places, what other areas does that affect? Good, right into a windmill. So arms out to the side. Be gentle with this, because if you're like me, you haven't been on your feet for a full hour, the fluid that fills up the spinal column when you're sleeping hasn't been pressed all the way out yet, which means that the discs are essentially swollen, and the vertebrae, which are your main shock absorbers, I just learned that last night from Stuart Miguel. He thought that the discs were, but the research showed, and a very prominent back surgeon showed, that the vertebrae were actually more shock absorbing than the discs themselves, and that they are made with like this lattice structure, and when there's pressure on them, the way that it forms the bone is where the stress is, or where the structure is. So we want those bones to stack correctly, and sometimes in the morning we have a little bit of that swelling in the spinal column. So big bends are probably less appropriate within the first hour of waking up. Over to one side, up and over to the other side. You can visualize right now as you're standing up and as you're pushing some of that fluid out of the spine, that it's lining up totally correctly, in perfect alignment. Take your feet wider once more. Having wider feet, if you have an elevated hip based on one quad or tensor fascia lata or hip flexor, psoas or iliacus, the one that goes inside of this bone or all the way up, If any of that is affected and that's rotating your pelvis, then just dropping your legs out wide can often level it. And then back in. Last ones. Good. Imagine you have rubber bands around your fingers, and I want you to press the rubber bands out. So that would be opposite of your typing fingers. Go into that extension and feel it on the top side, especially of your forearms. See if you can find those muscles, and then go back to narrow and press them out. Still against the wall, head, shoulders, butt. A few more. Awesome. Turn around and put your hands on the wall and walk yourself back a little bit. We're going to borrow from John Friend and Desi Springer in the global bow spring. So I want you to come up just off your heels, lift your heels off the floor, bend your knees, and take a deep breath and make the circumference of your body really round, and then stick your booty out a little bit so that you create a curve in your low back, and then create the rounding in your upper back. From the pressure of your hands into the wall, make that be big. And then I just want you to just bend and straighten in that position a little bit. So if you were to jump, find those same muscles. We're just going to use them more at that whisper level, so that that third level of muscles isn't what we're using. But what are the stabilizers that would have to stabilize your bones if you were to jump here? Can you find your butt muscles as you press up? And then take it into a side bend, so walk your arms over, and you could go down and up again, but a lateral bend in your spine. You can pulse here, and then walk your hands over to the other side, and down and up. And then back to standing. Standing arm circles, we're going to play with hand positions again. So this time, fingers spread wide. Take your wrists all the way up, elbows super straight. Fingertips to the wall, and just notice, how is the motion of your wrist? Can you get it straight up to the sky and press the elbows straight? Good. Circle forward. Do a few wrist bends. Now go down. Fully straighten the elbows. Take a deep breath. Put the fingers all the way down and circle backwards, 20 circles. And release. Imagine you're pulling something back, and then rotate the upper arm bone out and then back. So pull, turn that arm, and lengthen it out again. Pull, out. Wake up that rotator cuff. Wake up the mid-trap. If the shoulder blade can't stabilize on your spine correctly, the rotator cuff tends to shut down that first layer of muscle Then we get those stabilizers, the movers, like the deltoid and the upper traps to do more stabilizing. It's not really their job. Awesome. Come down onto your hands and knees. Really find some strength in your hands. So go up onto your fingertips. And first feel, as you grip with your fingertips, how that has to work the muscles all the way into the palm of your hand. And we don't necessarily think about using those muscles, but the arch of your wrist between your thumb and your pinky is an important piece, and the muscles of your hand are important to line up the bones of the wrist, the bones of the elbow, and into the bones of the shoulder. So just work that a little bit, and then place your hands back down, but keep that same activation in your palm, even though the hand is flat. And you can let your fingers curl up as long as your finger nubs and pads are pressing into the floor a lot, and that you could use like little pressure of your fingers to find stability. Especially if you were to go up into a handstand, you would need to be able to use your fingers to be a brake for you. So play with that idea. If you were to just move forward and back a little bit, that the fingers pressing into the floor is your brake. And if your wrist is in really good alignment, that movement forward and backward should feel fine. If your wrist is stiff or a little out of alignment, that may be more challenging to just move forward and back. Good, we're gonna go into a quadruped rock. I want you to stay out of the place where your butt winks. So just move enough back and forth that you can keep your spine in really good alignment. And the reason I say that is because I watched videos of hockey players who had bone bruises in their back, so a little bit of damage, and their trainer had them do a bunch of heavy squats. So not like this where it's not loaded, but heavy squats. And they basically made the bone bruise way worse because they worked into that wink too far in a sport where they never actually do squats, which was an interesting concept. Where do we have diminishing returns, and where do we need enough mobility and joint lubrication and stability to stay in a healthy body?
Well, that trainer really screwed up his clients, huh?
I mean, that's a lot of responsibility to have, but it looked like 2 years later his back was a heck of a lot worse. Who knows if that was the full culprit. All right, back to stable. Keep your hands really stable. Now let's move that direction. So I want you to pull your knee in toward your chest as much as you can without your spine moving. And then I want you to take that leg up into extension. So spine still, knee in toward chest, flexion as far as your body will let you go, and then into extension, in and out. I think that's where Pete would say healthy bodies should be able to do all of the things. And where Stuart McGill is a lot more sport specific about, he's the one that said, like, why would you take a basketball player with tight hamstrings and stretch them when that's exactly the spring that lets them dunk? Switch sides. In and up. Both of those men have helped countless people get out of back pain. So what works for some people doesn't always work for others. I was listening to a conference call the other day, and David, who's one of my teachers, said He was working with frozen shoulders. And he said, we have to remember that people get well from physical therapy every single day. It's just some of the people for that physical therapy doesn't work for that are the ones we end up seeing when they're still looking. Awesome. Round and arch your back. Cats and dogs. All the way up. All the way down. All the way up. Feel your shoulder blades slide around your rib cage. Feel that middle back area. Look up. Find some extensors in your neck. And round. And then come down onto your belly. So as you come onto your belly, just check, how is this for your body? Does this work for you? Does this work for you in the morning? Feel where your rib cage tucks under and settles and lets the upper back have that slight rounding. And then go ahead and do a hamstring curl, right leg. Try to bring your heel to touch your butt and bring it back down 10 times. Slowly, so find, as you bring that leg up, what has to happen in the pelvis, in the thigh, in your low back. Ideally, there should be very little movement as that leg comes up. The quad should lengthen. And there should be very little rotation in the pelvis or movement in the low back, just slightly, as the muscles that cross the hip and the knee get pulled on a little bit. If you feel like, whoa, that's a really big pull, or my pelvis really rolls, then go ahead and add some abdominal contraction to try to stabilize where your body's moving too much and let it pull on that thigh. Then switch legs. All the way up, all the way down. Bend your knees, both legs down and up. So as you add both together, what happens in the low back, if it starts to pull or you feel pressure, maybe add a little bit more abdominal work to hold it stable. And put the spring of the thighs, let that one pull. So stabilize where it's moving too much and let it pull in a place that's too tight. Stretch what's tight, strengthen what's weak. Now, speed it up a little bit. So go back to your right side. This time I want to pulse. So you're going to go up twice. We're going to borrow from Pilates. We're going to use the hamstring a little bit in a different way, so it has to grab. Yeah. Really take a breath into your shoulders. The shoulder blades right now are having to do that rotation. The lat is lengthened. As you breathe into the upper back, feel how that change in the shoulder blades keeps that open. And press back onto your hands and knees. Strong hands, round and arch. Cats and dogs. And then roll onto your side. I'm going to place the block between my feet. And you can lie on your arm or hold your head up. You choose. Keeping the feet there. Use the muscles of the deep hip muscles to rotate your leg up and down. Clamshells, find those rotators. 20. These are whisper or talking level muscles. So putting that block there, it's kind of a mix between an open kinetic chain and a closed kinetic chain exercise. Your foot is stable on something, but still free. But we're using that to drive this rotation into the hips and pelvis themselves. The deep six are your rotators. Your glutes are also your external rotators here. Deep six, the deepest muscles in the pelvis that hold the leg bone into the pelvis. Do a couple super slow, like take 10 seconds to get all the way up and control it all the way down. So eccentric and concentric contractions, super slow. Woo. When you get to 20, you can push that block away. Take your leg out to the side, stretch the knee straight, keep the heel as high as your toes, and then lift and lower, abduction, adduction, all the way up, all the way down. And then pull that foot in, stretch the bottom leg out straight, and lift and lower the bottom leg for 20. And then back to your clamshells, one more set of those 3 exercises. Ooh, my hip is feeling that today.
Yep.
Lift and lower. Picture those little muscles from the top of the leg bone into the pelvis. Your sciatic nerve runs either under or through the piriformis muscle. Piriformis is a muscle that opposes the psoas, so it helps keep the top of the femur in place, and then it helps do that little external rotation. Some people get piriformis syndrome, which is when that muscle clamps down, and sometimes people go after it with foam rollers or hydrovolt machines or things like that, and the piriformis is whining because it's trying to hold the head of the femur in place, and it's like the last level of defense of what's there. Some people also get it because they're like sitting on bicycle seats and it's just putting pressure right into that space. So it depends on what's going on and why you have it and how to treat it. Bring that leg forward, stretch the bottom leg out, and lift and lower. Switch sides. Lifts. We'll do 10 slowly and then a few super slow. Find those muscles. You can visualize it again. You have 6 muscles that come across the body like that, hook onto the leg bone, and pull the head of the leg bone back as you rotate that in the socket. Now you could have a tight hip capsule. You could have some kind of labral tear. You could have maybe some changes in the hip socket from a sport that you played or something as your body was developing that could shift how that rotates well. Or maybe you just drive a lot, for instance, so you have one hip flexor that's tighter than the other, and that makes your pelvis sit in a pelvic rotation. All of those changes can make it so the head of the femur doesn't rotate that precisely in the hip socket. And anytime we have extra movement in the hip socket, then we wear it out more quickly. And eventually what we see is that the femur head sits in the socket and then the pelvis and the leg bone move together. They don't spin independently anymore. So we want to continue to remind it how to move independently. Lift and lower. 20 lifts. Add lubrication to that joint. When you've done 20, pull that leg in, stretch the bottom leg out straight, and lift and lower. pelvic tilts. Feet on the floor, knees bent.
Kyra,
Oh,
you did 2 rounds on the other side. Are we gonna do this?
thank you for saving our hips.
Side number 1 again?
Yeah, no,
Oh, we did 2
second
on
set,
that.
we did 2 on the first side. Ha. Did you remember to do a couple? Super, super, super slow. And then again, just how is this different? You are a symmetrical biped. Basically, the bones and muscles are the same on the right and left side of your body, but many, many, many of us feel like one side is quite different than the other. How is that for you with these lifts? We've done 20 outer thigh lifts. Fold this in, press that leg straight. Okay, now onto your back pelvic tilts. Feet on the floor, knees bent. Rock your pelvis backward. Go ahead and go to a flat back and just feel how do the vertebrae move into flat. Do you have segmental control from the pelvis into the sacrum, into the low back? And then as you roll up, the sit bones go wide, your pelvic floor broadens, and you should have an arch all the way up into the mid-thoracic back, and then go ahead and go all the way to flat. So extensor muscles of the spine between each vertebrae should be able to work, and then over those little muscles are like your lumbar erectors, much bigger stabilizing muscles, and they should be able to lengthen as you go down and add your abdominals, and shorten as they come together, down and up. And then come into a plank on your elbows. Kind of hold that for 30 seconds. Press through your heels, work your body, hold it there, build some endurance into your core musculature, your structure. And then roll your feet to one side, come up onto one side as long as that feels okay in your shoulder. Lift your hips, do your best to keep your hips stacked, one right on top of the other. And I have a difference in this shoulder that makes my pelvis want to rotate. So notice if there's a difference for you. Come back to the middle, move like you're stiff like a board, come up onto the other side. Pelvis stacked, One right up and down, also into the shoulder. Hold and breathe. And release it down. And then come into a table position. So feet on the floor, hands coming back towards you. Lift your butt off the floor. I feel this pull through my right bicep tendon. That's the one that is a little short, my right pec, in the front of my chest and my right bicep. Yeah, find a place that feels okay for your wrists. So I'm gonna try and add that mid trap again, the muscles that pull my shoulder blades together and down in my middle back, and use that to help add support to my low back and my butt muscles and my hamstrings, and see if I can get that right shoulder to just have some length. Breathe, and come on down. Nice work. Come into whatever position you would like to be in for your meditation today.
That length?
Back of my whole arm. Got you, that tricep and everything? Yeah.
Stand to stand.
Good.
It's not a position we hang out in.
So find a position that feels comfortable for you. Lying down, seated. And then take a moment to close your eyes and begin to pay attention to the breath. And first, manipulate the breath. So take a few breaths and notice if you can bring it into an aspect of your rib cage or your lungs that maybe it wasn't moving too easily. And then allow the breath to function all by itself. Recognizing that the breath is that connecting force, and that it is something we can pay attention to work on or change our brain state, our physical state, our emotional state. Or we can simply observe it and come back to the present moment. Once your physical body is resting on the floor and the breath is flowing, check in with your emotional body. How is your awareness of the emotional body existing? What are you feeling right now? What arises? Where is that awareness? Do you feel emotions in your head, in your heart, in your belly? And if you get still enough, can you begin to experience this space between the breaths, between the emotions? This aspect of yourself is always there, it's always calm. Sometimes we have to wade through quite a bit of conditioning, especially if we're triggered, to get back to this calm space. That's the practice. Blame, shame, fear are all programs that are helping us to evolve. Take one more minute and tap into this aspect of yourself, this calm, joyful place. And then once more, try to look for the seat of that attention. Where is the place you're experiencing that from? And can you turn attention on itself? In this calm space, just program into your body today that you are turning on the energy that flows through your body that allows perfect health to exist in your body. That you have the support of your friends and your family in this community to support the vital energy in your body, the prana, the life force that flows through us. And that as we invite the light into these vessels that are our physical body, that light gets to radiate out so that all the people that we're in contact with today get to experience some of that light. We get to give and receive love in whatever aspect that shows up today. Take one deep breath and begin to surface. And as you surface, be awake and aware and carry all that with you for the day. Awesome. Thank you for being here. Once again, if this feels good to your body, please like or subscribe, join the channel, and I'll see you on Thursday.